Welcome to the series. Here we perform hands-on exercises with OpenAI API and Python. Here we will cover the OpenAI Embeddings API and its usage in two parts. In this video, which is part 1, we will follow these steps. First, we'll cover vector embedding basics with a OpenAI embedding model. Second, we will create a reusable embedding function, create Panda Dataframes, and generate a CSV file. Third, we will learn how to calculate tokens. And lastly, we will learn how to calculate the cost of embeddings. Now let's get started. All right, so let's get some installation done, the necessary libraries. All right, so all the necessary libraries have been installed. As you can see, we have OpenAI, this is the latest version, and NumPy, Pandas, tick token. That being done, let's set up the API key. We kept it simple, just setting up this environment variable, OpenAI API key. Just replace this string with your own API key and hit this button, you're done. All right, and this one thing extra, which is basically a helper function to help us with the output displays. Basically, it just takes in any of the outputs we may have and then prints them within this width limit. And remember, we're going to replace the print function with myPrint. And first, we're going to have the embedding basics done. We will create an embedding custom method. So then I'm going to use Panda Dataframes and generate an embedding CSV file. Then we will calculate tokens, and using this methodology, we will learn how to calculate our embedding costs using this file. That said, let's start right here. All right, so let's take care of the basics. We're just bringing in the OpenAI class from OpenAI and creating our client by instantiating this class. And here I have my text, which is the word red, and I'm just improving it or performing basic cleanup by replacing the /n or new line character from the end by replacing it with space. This is the basic cleanup you always have to do before you send any text for embedding purposes. And here we finally perform our embedding by using this client object .embeddings.create as an argument. Input becomes my text, which is this. And as an embedding model, we use text-embedding-3-small. All right, so at this point, I'm just going to use print to display the output, which is response.data, the first item .embedding. I'll run it. All right, see, this is what it does. It prints everything like this, all wide. So now I'm going to use my print and see the difference. There you go. See, now you get to see the entire embedding set. And imagine it's all for this word red. That said, we're done with the basic. Next, let's create our embedding method. All right, here we will create a repeatable function called getEmbedding. And that's because recently, OpenAI had an upgrade to version 1. And what that did, it disappeared this nice little utility we used to have, OpenAI Embeddings utility, from which we used to get embedding functions, cosine similarity functions, etc. Very, very helpful utilities. They just disappeared. And nobody's talking about any replacement. So I had to create my own. But before, I just create client using OpenAI. And in here, as argument, we send our target text that needs to be embedded. And as a model, we use this default model. And then we just do a basic cleanup as we did before, remove the new line character, and then we take this text and send it inside this function. This is basically what you saw before, just written in one line. This whole thing, client.embeddings.create and input text and model. This is basically this guy right here. And then the output, this .data0 embedding, I just tagged along with this, like behind this. Exactly that, which means the whole function will return the resulting embeddings. That said, now let's see. Here I am setting up some made up data, basically a list of strings as my text, and here I'm bringing in the Panda Dataframe as I'm imported from here as PD. So with that pd.dataframe, and I'm sending this data to create a new data frame. Basically what's going to happen is this text is going to show up under this column name. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create another column called OpenAI Embeddings using the same data frame, and here I will get this column as the input data, and then dot apply and call a lambda function, which is basically an anonymous function. Here, this X is basically the data, the text data from this column. It goes in, and this is the model. Basically, we're calling the same function that we created right here, get embedding. It takes text and model. Here, you can just ignore this one, and this will be default. But if you want to change this model to something else, let's say dash large, this is going to replace this guy, right? So with this new embeddings, this column will be created beside this column. Then I take this data frame and use toCSV method to generate this CSV file. This is a made-up name. You can call it anything you want. And index equals false because I want only the data to show up, not the indices. With that done, if this is successful, then we will find this file in here. Okay, so let's run this. Okay, now let's go check right there. We have our CSV file. And now that we do, let's go to the next step. Here we just use the Panda library again to read this CSV file and make it show up, basically the content. Oh, there you go. So this is our data frame looking like. Here's our my text column where all the source text, and inside OpenAI embedding, we have all our embeddings that we just created. With that done, let's go to calculating tokens. All right, so this is where we calculate tokens, and I'm bringing in the tick token library that we installed at the beginning. First, we're creating the object using tick token.encoding for model, and we pass the OpenAI embedding model that we have been using. With that, now we send a string of text to encode, enc.encode using this object, and we're printing it. This will show us the content, and then we take the same function and add a len to it, len function, which is to measure this token length, and it's going to give us how many tokens belong to this sentence, right? With that, let me run this, and there you go. The content is this because these are all IDs, token IDs, and when we calculate it, we get 4 tokens out of this one sentence. With that done, let's take it to the another level. Use this methodology to calculate our embedding cost from this file that we generated. All right, so this is where we're going to calculate the embedding cost of the my text column, which is basically this guy right here. We're taking this column content and passing it to this variable words as a list, and then follow this methodology to calculate the token cost. So first we go for the total tokens, create the sum of the length of this enc.encode and word as an argument. Basically what's happening here is the list comprehension. So we're looping through all the words that we got here and then encoding it to tokens and then totaling up the entire number of tokens with the sum, and then printing it out here. So this is going to show us total tokens. And once we have the total tokens in this column, then we multiply that with this number. And this is something I have collected from the OpenAI documentation as cost of per 1,000 tokens. And then we print out the result. Let me run this. And there you go. This is our text content. We have a total of 9 tokens, and the estimated cost is this, which is pretty low. But then as your text content goes larger, so this price also goes up. With that, I conclude this part, the part 1, where we used OpenAI, Python, and the Embeddings API.